You're listening to Evergreen Media Network. I am Cindy Schwartz, and this is the Patient Partner Show. It's a podcast, and it's also a talk radio show on iHeartRadio. Jeannie Roller is my co-host. Jeannie, it's a sad story to talk about today, but, I'm glad that you did get really good care and really good information, and you've got information for the listeners about end-of-life care and different advanced directives and things like that. And we forget about that. I do. I mean, I'm guilty of not even having half that stuff in place, and that I really should. But I'm glad to hear that you did get good care for your mom, and I want to hear about that.
Well, Cindy, as you know, my mother passed away about a month ago. She was 94. The thing was, she went to the doctor 2 weeks earlier, and he told her she was as healthy as a horse and she would live past 100. So much for that. But anyhow, we took her to a local hospital, and they were just wonderful. The people there, the emergency room doctor, even the EMTs that took her, the nurses, they sent a card here a couple weeks ago with all of them signing it with a personal message. They were just really wonderful. And, we were so lucky to have that staff. I just cannot tell you how much better they made such a horrible situation, because I never expected my mother to pass away.
Right.
Didn't expect that.
I've heard that too, and I'm not making light about it, Jeannie. I have heard so many people say that. A former friend of my mom's had left a cardiologist, and he said, the cardiologist had said to him, "Oh no, blah, blah, blah," and he had a heart attack driving home. So it's really sad, but you know what? At the end of the day, they do the best they can is all I'm going to say, and it's sad because no one wants it to happen. None of us want that to happen. We don't. And I'm so sorry about that for anyone that's happened to.
Yeah. But about 10 years ago, I had my mother, I put pressure on her to get an advance directive and a health directive and power of attorney drawn up so that, we would know what she wanted. And she wanted me to ultimately be in charge, which was the power of attorney. I had her health directive. I gave it to the ambulance of the EMTs. They took it with them to the hospital because she was stable at the time, so they were able to bypass our local hospital that she did not want to go to, and they took her to another hospital. And they asked, when I got there, they asked what, she was stable. Then all of a sudden, as we were standing there, she went critical and coded. And they asked what I wanted done. And I said, "Do you have her health directive?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Well, she spelled out in that health directive exactly what she wanted done." And I said, "You need to follow what she said," because she spelled it out. It was notarized and drawn up by an attorney. And, it's a horrible situation. You know this from losing your parent, that the grief is overwhelming and it just seems surreal. So I'm so appreciative that she did do that, because that took it off of me to have to make those decisions.
Right.
Because I don't feel comfortable myself to say, yes or no to a person's life. That's not in me. I know some people can, but for me, it's not in me. So I hope that everyone will do this for their loved ones, because, there's enough grief that your loved ones can't, second guess. Should I have given more time? Should I have done it sooner? Have your health directives, your advanced directives drawn out so you can take some of that pressure off. She had her, she had talked to me in the past about, her burial and her funeral and everything like that. So I knew it. So, talk with your loved ones, know what they want, so that in a time of intense grief, that it's just a little bit easier to get through it if you know what your loved one wanted done.
Yeah.
So,
I totally agree with you about that, Jeannie. Yeah. And it's, it makes it more difficult. Like you said, your mom was like a sudden thing. Yeah. She was your mom was 94 years old. So, that's a good life. but the doctor had just said, you think you're doing all right, you're healthy as a horse, blah, 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 blah. But, you can legitimately go at any time. Any of us can, which is the really sad part. And it's the shocking part. And that's even more difficult of a time than, say, if you know the person has something or you suspect they have something and it might be, that's what's going to happen. But in either case, you want to have a lot of that burden taken off of you. I know that for a fact. I've been in both scenarios, and neither one of them is optimum at all. And it's going to be the burden on one person, I'm here to tell you. I mean, in my case, it was so many people that I've talked with. It's one of the children, one of the relatives. It's always going to be on, I don't want to say always, but most often it's going to be on one person's shoulders to make the decision, that split decision. They happen to be there at the time, blah, 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 blah. And it's tough to do. It's tough to do.
Or it could be, several children and they don't agree.
Well, right.
So, by picking that one ahead of time and knowing that one, then you can work with it easier. I think.
Well, you bring up.
I asked my sister what she thought. I knew ultimately, I had the decision, but I didn't ever play that because that wasn't what I wanted to do. Yeah. But I knew ultimately I had to make the decisions.
Yeah.
But,
well, you bring up a good point, because I do know of people where there is one that was in charge, quote unquote, and then the other ones go, well, I wouldn't have done that. After it was done, it's like, well, why did you do that? I wouldn't have done that. But, you don't want that on yourself either. It's just a tough thing. If it's in writing and this is what your mom or dad or whoever it is, your sibling, your aunt, your uncle, grandparents, whoever that we're talking about, it is easier. And that way you have, I don't want to say proof, because who wants to do that in that situation? But it just eases people's minds. I've been in both of them. I said that to my mom, died suddenly, and I took the role because I had talked with her the most about it, and my mom didn't ever want to talk about it. I don't ever want to talk about any of that stuff. I want nothing down in writing. So I was kind of like, well, this is what I think. I think this is the best thing. I think this is the best thing. And then when my dad, he was there he was there after my mom died. I was like, please don't do that. If you can actually physically, stomach it, if you will, just tell me what you want to do and let's start getting some of this in motion. So none of us have to go through that. And he did. Thankfully, he did. And I was like, it was like a blessing, because I didn't really want to go through it again, and neither did my siblings. It's just too difficult, it is. And you're hoping you make the right decision. Everybody does that. But at the end of the day, it is just easier. So I'm glad to hear that you did have some good care with that, Jeannie. And I want, I want you to talk about it, because there is good care out there. There is. It's not all bad. Yeah. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah. No, it's not. And, I'm so grateful that those people were so professional and so compassionate in their care, from the EMTs, which in, my husband's case, we had bad experience with, all the way through the ER. But this time they were all just very, very, the EMT had left her equipment in the house, and she asked me for permission to go back in and get it. I'm like, of course. So, they were just, I cannot say enough good about them. So there are good ones. My problem, Cindy, and you and I, we disagree about this. My problem is that there's no way that I can tell the good from the bad until, it's too late. So I always look for the worst, but this time I got the best. So I was, very, very happy about that. But, I always go in looking for, well, what are they going to do wrong to me?
Yeah, well, that's that.
And see, you're different.
Yeah. Well, it's the half full, half empty kind of glass scenario. And I don't mean to be trite about that, but it's the trust. Yeah. It is the trust. And I have some directions of where I put mine. And, I speak up. How many times do we have to say that? Speak up, speak out, ask the questions, and don't be afraid to do it. It's your care.
Right.
You don't have to be adamant about it at all. But, on that note, again, stay listening to Evergreen Media Network.